Hey guys, what's going on? It's Chris from Chris Drives Badly. Hope you're having a great day. Today I wanted to talk about a piece of sim racing hardware that isn't talked about as much as it used to be, and that's what I've got over there in my rig, the Fanatec DD2. I have been saying CSL DD2 for about 5 takes now. CSL, oh my gosh, why is it the CSL? I want to talk about it because, I don't think it's talked about so much anymore, and I think it's a good piece of hardware, and I wanted to give my thoughts on it and discuss who is this for in 2023. I mean, it's a much different landscape in terms of sim racing hardware than what it was back when I bought this thing, so why don't we get right into it? I want to start with the basics, the mounting of this thing. It does have a side mounting, these arms that come in from the side, and you put the bolts in, and you can adjust based on the tightness of the bolts. You can kind of lean forward or back or whatever. It is a little bit more money, at least it was for me when I had my SIMLAB GT1 Evo rig. I bought that, and I had to buy the CSL Podium, the Fanatec Podium series, and it came with the mounting setup for that. Now Fanatec does make a ridiculously priced arm mount option thing. I think last time I checked it was something ridiculous like $150 or something like that. These were like 30 bucks, but it was something that I had to get. And what I will say about it is that it is kind of hard to mount because this thing is a really heavy wheelbase. It's a big old motor in there, so trying to do it yourself is a little tricky. I had some help, but we got it on there, and I would say after it's mounted, it's very solidly attached to the rig. So you get some optimal torque transfer, everything's good. So I would say that's a good system. It's just going to be kind of a bear to mount that, and you're going to have to deal with buying the right type of mount. I think you can mount underneath, but it's sort of like the CSL Elite. There, I can say CSL on that one. The CSL Elite has the C-clamp for the desk, and what you can do is you can mount, instead of the C-clamp, you can mount with those holes. It's got the same holes on this wheelbase, I believe. Now, out-of-the-box functionality has improved a lot from when I first got the wheel. Back when I bought it, there was a big hesitation by a lot of people of, if I get direct drive, I'm gonna have to go through the whole process of setting this thing up and tuning it for every single game, and it's gonna be a real hassle. Well, the good news is that because so many companies now are making direct drive wheelbases, games are supporting them, and the manufacturers are getting better at providing good baseline profiles for you to use, and this is no exception. Nowadays, the DD2 with the firmware update has auto setups that I actually think are pretty good. The only note on those auto setups is that if you want to make a small change when you're in auto mode, is you can't actually make any changes. It won't save to one of the 5 profile slots that you have. So you have to copy the settings over manually and then go through and tweak them to your liking on one of your profile slots. It's a real pain. I wish they would just have a quick, once you have auto on, you can go auto setup 1, auto setup 2, whatever, and then you can go ahead and make your changes from there. That would be nice, but it's probably not a good way of doing that now that I think about it. Speaking of the setups and everything is the software. Software that comes with it is the Fanatec control panel, which does all your firmware updating. It allows you to go and edit all the profiles. It's really good. I really do like that piece of software. There is a secondary piece of software that Fanatec does have called FanaLab. And FanaLab, I don't really know why there's 2 different softwares, but there are 2. FanaLab has things like you can change the shift light colors on your wheels. I think really the FanaLab is more for like the rims themselves, the settings you can tweak, but I'm pretty sure you can tweak a lot of those settings on the control panel as well. So I don't really know why there are 2 different softwares that Fanatec offers. So hopefully they condense that into one, and then we just are less confused. Now, compatibility. Obviously, out of the box, this is a really, PC-oriented wheelbase. There is compatibility for the Xbox. You can attach a wheel to it that's got the Xbox configuration, and it acts like a controller, so you're all good on that front. But there is very limited, very tricky PlayStation compatibility. The reason I say it's limited and tricky is because they only made one bundle that actually had the PlayStation compatibility baked into it, and that was the Podium F1 edition. I think it worked with PS4. I don't know if it still works with PS5 or not, but I think there's a few floating out there, but they don't sell them anymore from their store, so you have to go find that yourself on eBay. I would just say, for all intents and purposes, this thing is not on PlayStation. If you wanted a good PlayStation rim, Fanatec does offer the Gran Turismo bundle now with the CSL DD, which we'll get into some of these other comparables a little bit later on. What is nice is that over time, like I mentioned before, with the auto setups and everything with the direct drive wheels, is games have a lot more out-of-the-box default setups, and a lot of programs can actually identify the wheelbase. I remember back a few years ago when I bought this thing, is you needed to go into the settings and say it was a custom wheel, and then go and tune in all your settings yourself that way. Nowadays, most games pick it up. That's a CSL, or that's a Fanatec DD2, and it knows exactly what to do with it, so that's good. Now, obviously, with the older sims like Richard Burns Rally, R Factor 1, insert old sim title here, you're gonna have the same hiccups that we had back in the day. You're gonna need to find the right controller support, and it's a whole thing. But again, if you're playing those older titles, you know that that's gonna be a challenge already before you boot those up. Pros and cons. We'll start with the pros, and the first thing is the fidelity out of this thing is second to none. It's probably the most detailed force feedback that you can possibly get, and this is a huge step up from what I thought was already a huge step up from the previous thing, which was the CSL Elite. Hey, I can say CSL on that one too. The CSL Elite was a big step up from the Thrustmaster T150. So gear driven to belt driven to direct drive. I mean, there's all, these are steps all along the way. But I would say that it was a huge step between the CSL Elite and this DD2. The DD2, it's not just about the torque numbers, it's about how quickly it delivers the force feedback. You can catch slides, you get detail that you didn't realize that was there. It's sort of like putting on really high definition headphones the first time, and then you suddenly hear, like in the master of music, you start to hear like more instrumentals and little details that you never thought were there, and now all of a sudden you can hear those things. It's the same thing with the DD2, as you get a ton more detail, and that is really the biggest pro out of all the pros. As a result of all this detail that you get out of it, is, for me personally, it's made me a better driver. It's helped me learn how to be a better driver. So I think part of that is, well, just putting more hours under it, but putting more hours with this thing has actually helped me drive different types of cars than I could before. Previously, I used to really love driving the front engine cars that were kind of boats, and they plowed through turns and understeer characteristics, but now I actually really enjoy driving cars with a lot more front end grip. Cars that are a little bit more oversteery, because now I can really feel and control those cars. I didn't do that before when I had my CSL Elite. Those cars were just dangerous, I would try to turn in and lose the car every single time, but now with this thing, I actually prefer driving those types of cars. Another major pro with this thing is the Fanatec ecosystem. And I would say dollar for dollar in terms of value to what you get. I think the Fanatec wheels, I would put them up against anybody else's at the price point, and you're probably winning with Fanatec. So for the first thing that for the first time in terms of the value proposition, you're actually going to get ahead when you have a wheelbase like this in the lineup. Because again, when you buy this Porsche rim that I've got here, compare that to other manufacturers' rims, the Porsche rim is better. It's got more buttons, it's got better layout, it's cooler, it's got a nice nice leather grip, and it comes with those nice shift paddles. So you get all these things in the ecosystem, which is really nice. And then one of the major benefits to being in the Fanatec ecosystem with the DD2, possibly have it on the CSL DD as well, I'm not so sure, is that you can plug in all of your pedals, your shifter, your handbrake, all plug into the back of the wheelbase itself. That saves a lot of USB ports. And if you're like me, you probably have very few USB ports / an expansion card that's almost full. That's where I'm at with USB ports. I'm probably stretching my PC too thin, but with this I get to save a few more ports, so yay, I'm good with that. Now, talking about the cons, the quick release system is just not good. like just full stop, not good. They have been talking about a replacement quick release system called the QR2 for about 3, maybe 4 years now, and we have not seen that in the wild yet. When the BMW rim came out, they were supposed to be debuting it with that, and there were some rumors that it was going to come out this year, back in May, and then we didn't see it. And anyways, there's been a lot of talk about it and no real results on that front. So the main issue with it is that there is some play, and when there's any play in a rig or in a wheelbase or at any point in time, you're going to be losing some of that fidelity. And you do lose a little bit of that with this quick release system. And if they could fix that, I think that's probably the con that makes up 75% of my problem with the wheelbase. Maybe 90%, honestly. The next shortcoming is the PlayStation compatibility. It's a real miss, in my opinion, that they don't have PlayStation rims to attach to this thing. It's kind of a shame. You know, you would think that they would try to be putting as much of their product on as many different systems as they possibly could, but no PlayStation compatibility is a miss. There is a bit of low torque notchiness is what I would describe it, which is whenever you're coming out of the pit lane and you're not really moving fast, you do have a little bit of what I would call notchiness. It's kind of weird, but it's also very short-lived. Once you get up to speed, even slightly, that sort of goes away. And in my opinion, I don't really notice it. I noticed it after those reviews, and I was like, okay, no, that's not really a big deal to me, but it might be to you. The last obvious con is the price. The price on this thing is pretty high, and they've lowered the price a little bit. I think it's $100 cheaper now than it was like 2 or 3 years ago. So I would suggest that you look at some other comparisons if the cost is going to be a big factor. The comparison-wise, I think I made it very clear already, but it destroys any non-direct drive competitor, and it's not close. But comparing it to the other low Newton meter direct drive offerings out there, it is a lot more than those. It's a lot beefier, and so it kind of bats in the same category as like the VRS DD and the SIMRIG. But are any of those wheelbases still good compared to the lower end stuff? And what I would say is that there's always going to be a division between people that are going to be more entry level, moderate enthusiasts, and the top end enthusiasts. And I think this is a product that's more positioned at the top end for top end enthusiasts. What's nice about it is that it's German made. The motor is, at least. I'm sure there's some components made in China and stuff, but they back it with a 5-year warranty. I know that's a lot better warranty than what other companies are putting out on their direct drive wheels, so you do have that. The other thing is, again, it's made in Germany, and you know the Germans make great stuff.
Made in Germany. You know the Germans always make good stuff.
The other factor here is that the wheel is capable of running at 25 Newton meters, but it's not really going to be used for that because most people are going to like break their wrists and get bad carpal tunnel if you run it at 25 Newton meters for that long. I run this thing at 35 to 40% basically all the time, somewhere in that range, 30 to 40%. And as a result, you're running the motor a lot lower than it's capable of, so I would say that you're probably preserving components. At least logically speaking, that makes sense to me. Over time, it's probably going to hold up better than some of these other lower end offerings that are going to be running at 8 Newton meters all the time, or running at 5 all the time, or running at 12 all the time, or running at 90% of their output at all times. This is going to be running at like 30, 40, 50%. So that's going to mean that this thing logically will last longer. And so I could see myself with this on my rig 5 years from now pretty easily, or even 10 years from now. So this brings me to the question, who is this for in 2023? I really only see this for 2 different types of people right now. And the first type is the high-end enthusiast, kind of like what I talked about before. There's mid-end and then there's the high-end enthusiast. This is probably for the same people that are buying, you know, the really expensive force feedback brake pedals and that sort of stuff. You can expect those people to be buying this, but it's also for the person that just wants the best experience and doesn't want to necessarily spend untold amounts of money on a semi-cube setup with Asher wheels. Like, you can spend upwards of $4 or $5 grand alone on that stuff that you can get for probably half that price with the Fanatec ecosystem. So in conclusion, I would say this is a fantastic piece of hardware that I think the market has passed by in a lot of respects. I don't think this is for the average sim racer, and I think this is well outside the budget for the average sim racer too. Right now, there is a absolutely smoking deal that Fanatec is putting out there with their CSL DD with a rim with the CSL Elite pedals for I think $500 or $600 or something like that. I mean, that is a absolutely amazing deal. The fact that you can get entry-level direct drive now is just such an amazing thing, and it's going to solve the fidelity issue for probably 95% of people in sim racing. So I would say that the broad appeal, this isn't really it. It's fun, I love it, I don't regret buying it, but nowadays I would say that there are options that you can spend a little bit less on and actually get comparable performance for the most part. It's a question of how long is it going to last, is there the same QC on it, what kind of warranty are you getting, what kind of ecosystem are you buying into? That's really where the market battle is going to be about, is those key parts. And I think that the DD2, for as good as it is probably not for most people in that case. If you like this video, hit the like button, consider subscribing, and tell me in the comments how wrong I am. I'd love to hear that. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter. Follow me there. Tell me how wrong I am on there too. I'd love to hear it. I put my crappy F1 opinions on Twitter, so let me have it, you know. But yeah, I really enjoyed making this video. I love talking about sim racing hardware. Maybe we'll get some more hardware reviews in the future. Thanks for watching this time, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.